The Industrial Revolution affected every part of life in Great Britain, but proved to be a mixed blessing. Eventually, industrialization led to a better quality of life for most people, but the change to machine production initially caused human suffering. Rapid industrialization brought plentiful jobs, but it also caused unhealthy working conditions, air and water pollution, and, of course, the ills of child labor. It also led to the rising class tensions, especially between the working class and the middle class. This is Mrs. Chavez, and we're starting Section 2 of Chapter 25, Industrialization. The pace of industrialization accelerated rapidly in Britain. By the 1800s, people could earn higher wages in factories than on farms. With this money, more people could afford to heat their homes with the coal from Wales and dine on Scottish beef. They wore better clothing, woven on power looms in England's industrial cities, and the cities swelled with waves of job seekers. Rapid urbanization. For centuries, most Europeans had lived in rural areas. After 1800, though, the balance shifted towards cities. This shift was caused by the growth of the factory system, where manufacturing of goods was concentrated in a central location. Between 1800 and 1850, the number of European cities boasting more than 100,000 people rose from 22 all the way to 47. Most of Europe's urban areas at least doubled in population, some even quadrupled. This period was one of rapid urbanization, city building, and the movement of people to the cities. Factories developed in clusters because entrepreneurs built them near the sources of energy, such as water and coal. Major new industrial centers sprang up between the coal-rich areas of southern Wales and the Clyde River Valley in Scotland, but the biggest of these centers developed in England. Britain's capital was London and was the country's most important city. It had a population of about 1 million by 1800. During the 1800s, its population exploded, providing a vast labor pool and market for new industry. London became Europe's largest city, with twice as many people as its closest rival, Paris. New cities challenged London's industrial leadership. Birmingham and Sheffield became iron smelting centers. Leeds and Manchester dominated textile manufacturing. Along with the port of Liverpool, Manchester formed the center of Britain's bustling cotton industry. During the 1800s, Manchester experienced rapid growth from 45,000 in 1760 to 300,000 in 1850. Because England's cities grew rapidly, they didn't have any kind of development plans, no sanitary codes or building codes at all. They lacked adequate housing, education, and police protection for the people who were pouring in from the countryside to seek jobs. Most of the unpaved streets had no drains, and garbage was left on the streets in great piles. Workers lived in dark, dirty shelters, with whole families crowding into one bedroom. Sickness was widespread. Epidemics of the deadly disease cholera regularly swept through the slums of Great Britain's industrial cities. In 1842, a British government study showed an average lifespan to be 17 years for working-class people in one large city, compared with 38 years in nearby rural areas. Elizabeth Gaskell wrote a novel called Mary Barton, and that presented an accurate portrayal of urban life experienced by many at the time. Gaskell provided a realistic description of the dank cellar dwelling of one family in a Manchester slum. Meanwhile, the wealthy merchants and factory owners, along with their families, fled the city and the epidemics of sickness to live in luxury homes in the newly formed suburbs. To increase production, factory owners wanted to keep their machines running as many hours as possible. As a result, the average worker spent 14 hours a day at the job, 6 days a week. Work did not change with the seasons, as it did on the farm. Instead, work remained the same week after week and year after year. Industry also posed new dangers for workers. Factories were seldom well lit or clean. Machines injured workers. A boiler might explode or a drive belt might catch an arm, and there was no government program to provide aid in case of an injury. The most dangerous conditions of all were found in the coal mines. Frequent accidents, damp conditions, and the constant breathing of coal dust made the average miner's lifespan 10 years shorter than that of any other workers. Many women and children were employed in the mining industry because they were the cheapest source of labor. Though poverty gripped Britain's working class, the Industrial Revolution created enormous amounts of wealth in the nation. Most of this new money belonged to the factory owners and the shippers and merchants. These people were part of a growing middle class, a social class made up of skilled workers, professionals, business people, and wealthy farmers. The new middle class transformed the social structure of Great Britain. In the past, landowners and aristocrats had occupied the top position in British society. With most of the wealthy, they held the social and political power. Now some factory owners, merchants, and bankers grew wealthier than the landowners and the aristocrats. Yet important social distinctions divided those two wealthy classes. Landowners looked down on those who made their money in the vulgar business world. Not until the late 1800s were rich entrepreneurs considered the social equals of the lords of the countryside. Gradually, a large middle class, who were neither rich nor poor, emerged. The upper middle class consisted of government employees, doctors, lawyers, and managers of factories, mines, and shops. The lower middle class included factory overseers and skilled workers like tool makers, mechanical drafters, and printers. These people enjoyed a very comfortable standard of living. During the years between 1800 and 1850, laborers of the working class saw little improvement in their living and working conditions, as they watched their livelihoods disappear as machines replaced them. In frustration, some smashed the machines they thought were putting them out of work. One group of such workers was called the Luddites. They were named after Ned Ludd, an English laborer who was said to have destroyed weaving machinery around 1779. The Luddites attacked whole factories in northern England beginning in 1811, destroying labor-saving machinery. Outside of the factories, mobs of workers rioted, mainly because of their poor living and working conditions. Despite the problems that followed industrialization, the Industrial Revolution had a number of positive effects. It created jobs for workers. It contributed to the wealth of the nation. It fostered technological progress and invention. It greatly increased the production of goods and raised the standard of living. Perhaps most important, though, it provided the hope of improvement in people's lives. The Industrial Revolution produced a number of benefits as well. These included healthier diets, better housing, and cheaper mass-produced clothing. Because the Industrial Revolution created a demand for engineers as well as clerical and professional workers, it expanded educational opportunities. The middle and upper classes prospered immediately from the Industrial Revolution. For the workers, it took longer, but their lives gradually improved through the 1800s. Laborers eventually won higher wages, shorter hours, and better working conditions after they joined together to form labor unions. The long-term effects of the Industrial Revolution are still evident. Most people today in the post-industrialized countries can afford consumer goods that would have been considered luxuries 50 or 60 years ago. In addition, their living and working conditions are much improved over those of the workers in the 19th and 20th centuries. Also, profits derived from the industrialization produce tax revenues. These funds have allowed local, state, and federal governments to invest in urban improvements and to raise the standard of living of most city dwellers.